Meet PowerShell. It's time to put on our gloves, dig in, and get our hands dirty. One thing I'm going to have you do in this nugget is figure out how you want to interact with PowerShell. Do you want to use the console or the brand new integrated scripting environment? I'm also going to show you how to double check and make sure you're running the right version of PowerShell, and we'll cover some common points of confusion. Along the way, I'll also kind of give you a little bit of an orientation on these different tools, where to find different things, and some tips for getting them set up the right way so that you'll run into the fewest possible snags as you go along. Okay, so this is PowerShell. Technically, this is the Windows PowerShell Integrated Scripting Environment, or ISE. It's one of the two experiences you can choose to interact with PowerShell that's built into the box. Now, a lot of people like to use third-party editors. That's fine, that's great. So that you know, for the majority of this course, I will be working on a Windows Server 2012 box. It is a 64-bit machine, obviously, since the server OS is only available 64-bit. And I will primarily be working right here in the ISE. So I'm going to kind of give you a little tour of some features that I want you to pay attention to. One common point of confusion that I want to make sure everybody gets right off the bat is to look at the title bar. If you look really, really carefully, you'll see that the title bar here says Administrator right there. That's important. If it doesn't say Administrator, you are not an administrator. You don't run into that problem on server operating systems as much, but you will run into it on client computers that have user account control enabled. So no matter what PowerShell window you're using, if it doesn't say Administrator, you're not Administrator. Another useful clue that the title bar can give you is you'll notice mine does not say x86 anywhere in it. That means because I'm on a 64-bit computer, I'm using the 64-bit version of PowerShell. 64-bit computers also come with an x86, which is the 32-bit version of PowerShell. The only reason you should be in that is if there's some extension, some snap-in or module that you need to use that's only available in 32-bit. You can only run 32-bit extensions in the 32-bit shell, which is why they give it to you. If you are on a 32-bit operating system, so Windows 8 still available 32-bit, so you could do that. Windows 7 still available 32-bit, you could do that. If you're on a 32-bit operating system, you will only have a copy of PowerShell that is 32-bit, obviously, and it will not say x86, 32-bit, or anything else. There will be no visual cues. It's up to you to know that that's the situation you've got on your computer. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the ISE here. Let's do a little tour. You're looking at the console pane. I can hit this little button here and flip down to show the script pane. So this is where you would type longer scripts, which we'll come to eventually, and I'm going to flip this to hide it. You can have those run side by side. You can have a full screen version. And that's actually what I'm going to stick with. So I'm going to really be here in the console for, gosh, the vast majority of what we're going to be doing. You've also got this little command pane off to the side here. I'm going to hide it, so I get lots of space to work with. If you ever need it, you can pop it up in a floating window. I'll do this if I've got a really, really big screen to work with. But for right now, I'm going to close that. Not going to use that. I will get back to it and show you what it does, so don't fret that. It'll happen. If you need to launch the regular PowerShell console, you can. You've got some other tools here that we'll play with. The one you're really going to probably need right off the bat here is this one, which clears the screen. So here's one of the biggest gotchas of all of PowerShell. I'm going to type several characters, and I'm going to read the characters as I do them. I know this sounds totally kindergarten, and I apologize, but we got to do it. Single quote. Most computers, that's over near the Enter key. That's a back tick. So on most computers, that's on the upper left, or at least on most US keyboards, it's on the upper left under the Escape key. It's on the same key that does the tilde little curly thing. Double quote, parenthesis, square bracket, curly bracket, right? Type all of those. If you cannot easily tell the difference, and I got to tell you, at this font size, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with the back tick. So, tools, options. There's a couple of things you can do to address this. As soon as my options dialog comes up. There we go. You can change the font. Now, Lucida Console is not my personal favorite, so I am going to jump in and change this. I generally prefer Consulus. It's a little clearer for me. And I'm not going to bump up the font size here. Don't worry about that. There's a bunch of themes you can choose. You can actually make up your own themes. So you can see there's a bunch of different ones. Presentation is great if you're going to be doing like a lunch and learn or something, helping some of the folks in your office learn PowerShell. It blows up the font size pretty huge and changes the colors so that they're a little bit more contrasty. So that even if you've got kind of a low quality projector, it'll turn out okay. So I'm just for right now going to change the font to Consulus. There's some general settings you can play with. Show line numbers. I typically just leave all these turned on. You can mess with them however you want to. Let's get out of here. So I did get a shift in the font size, or font face. It's a little better. I still want to blow it up a bit. And there's a little slider down here that'll do that for you. Yeah, let's go with about there. Feels good. So now I can clearly see the difference between a single quote and this backtick character. This is important. I can also very clearly see the difference between a parentheses and the little curly bracket. So also very important. And if you cannot glance at the screen and tell the difference from these, then you need to do something about it, because that is going to mess you up as you start using the shell. So let's just hit escape, get rid of those characters. That little red squiggly was because that was totally illegal syntax, and it's driving me nuts sitting here watching it, so I'm just going to get rid of it. You do have an undo button, so I can undo that. So this is kind of neat little word processing type stuff. As you type commands here in the ISE, so I'm just going to start with a command called get service, get dash, and it's going to pop right up with all the possible commands that match what I've done so far. And as I type, it'll narrow things down. There's get service, so I can hit enter, hit space, and as soon as you hit a dash, it'll start prompting you for the parameters. Okay, so let's just do name. Give me all the services that start with S. But you'll see that it is also popping up with a list of all the services that are currently running. So if there's just a particular one I wanted to get to, I could say, yeah, that's the one I want. There's arrow down to it and hit enter. So it does this sort of autocomplete. I guess you would call it IntelliSense, because it's very similar to the features that are in Visual Studio that do stuff just like that. So that operates both in the script pane and in the console pane, which is where we are right now. You will notice as you're typing, let's run that command again, get service. Let's just do name. It is color coding as I go. So there's a different color used for command names, like get service, for parameter names, like minus name, and for the values of those parameters, like S star. So if you start getting used to the coloring, then you'll be able to kind of pick up on it when you type something wrong. For example, if you were to type get service incorrectly, you see how it starts coloring the second part of that purple because it thinks it's a parameter value? And your brain somewhere should be thinking, well, you know, usually command names are all the same color. Oh, right, it's because I forgot the dash in the middle. Now they're the same color, and I get my little pop-up help. So you can sort of stop yourself from preventing some simple typos if you get used to the color coding and start to pay attention to it. All right, that's the ISE. That's your first choice for working with PowerShell. And the second, I already have up and running, is the normal PowerShell console. Same things apply here. If you are looking at this window and it does not say administrator in the title bar, you are not administrator, and you will start getting errors like access denied. Don't mess with that. Relaunch it. The way you can do that, swing down to your taskbar here, right-click the icon, and you will get a Run as Administrator option. That will open a new window as administrator. The whole thing with x86 also applies. So everything I said about the title bar for the ISE counts here too. This is just a very simple command line. There's no script pane. There's nothing else. It does not do little pop-ups, but it will do something called tab completion. So given what I've typed so far, if I start pressing tab, it will start walking through all the different things that match that until I get to the one I want. I can then hit a minus for the first parameter name and just start hitting tab. Happens to be the first parameter's name, which is what I wanted. And then I'll type something else and hit, see, this will not help you with, oh, it is, look at that. I've never actually tried it with get service before. That's awesome. So there we go. However, before we get too excited, same things, single quote, backtick, double quote, parentheses, square bracket, curly bracket. Yeah, I'm still not seeing it. This little backtick is a pain in the neck. I will explain what it's for. It's an escape character in PowerShell. I swear half the time I read this in a code listing, say in a book or a magazine, and it looks like a piece of stray ink or somebody squashed a bug. So let's right-click here, Properties, Font. Consoles is my preference. There's no zoom slider here, so you're going to have to pick your font size. Let's go with 20. Okay, now I've run completely off the bottom of the screen. So back to Properties, Layout. I'm going to reduce the window height till it looks like it'll fit on the screen. Let's go with 30. That should be sufficient. So here's the deal. The window size section tells you how large your physical window is. Screen buffer is a virtual window. And I want to point something out here. If you look at this little window preview box over here, if you look along the bottom, you'll see that there's actually a scroll bar across the bottom. So here's what that looks like in the shell. I'll just hit OK. See, there's a scroll bar. That means there are certain commands you can run that will right justify all of their output. So you're going to run the command, and the output's going to appear all the way off to the right, and you're not going to actually see it. So I'm going to resize my window so that the window physically fits on my screen here. Okay, left, right, top, bottom. Okay, got all the edges. Then I'm going to go back into these properties. On the Layout tab, I'm going to make sure that whatever I've set as my real window size width is also the width for the screen buffer. The height is fine. You want the height to be a large number. And in fact, I like it to be a really large number. I'm okay having the vertical scroll bar so I can scroll back and look at output, but I don't want a horizontal scroll bar. And if you look at the bottom of this window, I no longer have one. That means as PowerShell is producing output, it will make it fit within this width. It won't push stuff off to the side where I might miss it or I might have to scroll back and forth to see it all. So that's really important. So the first thing you should do as you start getting into PowerShell is spend some time adjusting the window. Get the font fixed up nice and pretty. Make sure you can tell the difference between these characters. Make sure if you're using the console that you're not getting a horizontal scroll bar. Don't let anything float off the edge. Make sure you can see all four edges of your window. Don't have it hanging halfway off the screen like this. That's not conducive to success. Oh, now I got to get it back. Again, I suggest working in the ISE. This is where I'm going to spend most of my time. This will sort of do the horizontal scroll bar thing for you. You can't adjust that as much. Get your font chosen. Make sure you can tell the difference between these characters. Make sure you've got a good readable font size. If you want to get rid of that little command pane that was floating off to the side, just go ahead and close that out so you get a little bit more room. Make sure you've got colors that you like, and I showed you where in Tools Options you can go adjust those colors. A couple other things. If you've been playing with PowerShell already, you might have some stuff on your add-ons menu. Now, there is a website where you can download add-ons and stuff like that. If you've got some of these, please, for the moment, turn them off or uninstall them. Sometimes some add-ins will change the way the ISE behaves, and as I'm walking you through, I want you to be able to follow along and have exactly the same experience that I'm having so that you can check yourself and make sure that it's all working correctly. All right, so that should get you set. Now again, I'm running on Windows Server 2012. You could be using Windows 8. If you are using an older version of Windows, that could be Windows 7, Windows Server 2008, or Windows Server 2008 R2. You cannot use Windows XP and Windows Vista to get through this series because they will not run PowerShell version 3. So if you're not running the latest version Windows, you're going to have to install PowerShell version 3. Not a big deal, but I'm going to show you how anyway. So I'm going to hit Windows R on my keyboard to get me the run dialog because I don't feel like going through the Metro interface. HTTP download.microsoft.com. Wait until the Explorer of Internet gets itself there. Oh, yes, I know. I know. And you know, all it's doing is... All right, enough. All it's doing is just getting me to this stupid website. Search the download center. PowerShell. You are actually going to be looking for, not anything for Windows XP, PowerShell 1.0. Good days. You are going to be looking for something called the Management Framework Core. And if it doesn't show up on the first page, just go right back. There we go. And that will eventually pop up what you're after. It might just say something like Windows PowerShell 3.0. You're not after the Microsoft Management Console. Get yourself PowerShell 3.0 that way. That's how you're going to find it. Download that, install it on your computer, and you're good to go. Windows PowerShell 2 and 3 can install side by side. So that's one of the things that you're going to want to check. Once you're in PowerShell, $PS version table. This is going to tell you what version of PowerShell you are actually running, along with the version numbers of some other stuff. If for some reason you had version 2 installed before, and on an older version of Windows, you very likely would, and you need to run the older version, you would run, let's see if I can do this, Windows R PowerShell.exe minus version 2.0. I'll get a new window here. You'll notice the Windows title bar does not say administrator, but once it gets up and running, it does say administrator. So it has to take a second to check and see if I'm an admin. Now in here, PS version table, now you can see I'm running PowerShell version 2. So this is designed primarily for backward compatibility. It means that version 2 and 3 can live side by side on your computer and you can run whichever one you need to. It does default to 3. So before you go any further, make sure you've got 3.0 installed by checking PS version table, $PS version table. Make sure that's on your computer. Make sure it's up and running. Make sure that's the one you're using. Now, the last thing I really want to cover is just to kind of give you some context and a level set so you don't have too high of expectations for yourself. I am not a great typist. You're going to see me make all kinds of simple typos. There's one right there. One way to avoid making typos, because this is a command line shell, typing is all we're going to be doing. There's no clicking checkboxes, there's no drop-down list, this is all pure typing. You can make things a million times easier for yourself if you use the completion tools that you've been given. So in the console here, type just a little bit of what you plan to type and hit tab. Let the shell finish it. If you get to a certain point, if you're typing and you hit tab and nothing happens, you have typed wrong. And that means you should back up and hit tab again to try again. That will help you stop errors. You will not make as many errors if you let the shell do the typing, and you will be much less frustrated with this thing. Trust me, because I get frustrated with it. When you start typing your parameters, just type a couple letters and hit tab. Let the shell finish it. Type those things all the way out, but let the shell do it for you. In the ISE, it's actually even easier because you get the nice little pop. Oops, I don't think I'm typing in the window. There we go. You get the nice little pop-up. You can also use tab. There's the little pop-up. Name, tab. Minus, oops, I can't type another parameter here because I need to provide a value for the one I already typed. That's how it helps you prevent those types of mistakes. So let's just put all, then, now I can type the computer name parameter I was after. Let the shell help you with those things. Typing is harder than clicking things in a GUI. There's no question about it. And you are going to be doing a lot of typing. Let the shell take some of that typing load off of you. Really get used to using that tab completion and those little pop-up menus as they happen in the shell. Don't, what drives me really nuts is when I'll see someone typing a really long WMI. They'll get here, and I'm standing behind them in class, and I'm like, hit tab, please, just hit tab, finish it. And they're like, B, J, and sometimes, especially like at the end of the week, I'll just get so frustrated, I'll reach over and hit tab. Stop it, you're driving me nuts. Don't type stuff that the shell is willing to type for you. You will make fewer mistakes and you will be less frustrated. So just put that in your mind right now and really practice it. Force yourself to do those things until they become habitual, and then you will really save yourself time, effort, and frustration. So there you have it. You can choose to use PowerShell from the console or from the ISE. I'm going to be sticking with the ISE for most of this series. I think it's a great tool, and I think getting a familiarity with some of its features is really going to enhance your productivity in PowerShell. Showed you how to check the version. Please make sure you're running version 3 before you go any further in this series. And we covered some of the common points of confusion, the things that will definitely mess you up if you're not paying attention. So pay attention. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.